Hello everyone. Today I would like to explain different types of serializers available in Django REST framework. So basically in this video, first of all I will go through the basic concept behind serialization and deserialization process, and then dive deeper into different types of serializers available in Django REST framework. So at the end of the video you will be able to know different types of serializers in Django REST framework and what can you do with those serializers. So I will explain about different features available on those serializers and what can you do in order to build your application. So let's start. So first of all, as I said, I will explain the general concept behind serialization and deserialization, and then I will show a block diagram about it because I'm a visual person. I need to see or visualize something in order to understand some things properly, and then I'll dive deeper into the serializers, and I will explain you the difference between different serializers and how can we use those serializers within our Django application. So basically serialization is the process of converting or translating object into the format that can be translated or that can be transmitted and then later on reconstructed from the transmitted data, which means we can convert an object in any language. It can be Python, C++, and any other language. We can convert those object into, let's say, byte array, and then transfer that byte array into through the network to the other computer, and now the other computer will be able to access that byte stream and reconstruct the object. So basically this process is called serialization, and in terms of Django world, actually serializers allows complex data structures like query sets or model instances to be converted to the native Python objects or Python data types, and later on it can be rendered into the JSON or XML objects. So basically it's the way of converting objects from one form to other form, not objects but the data from one form to other form. So in this diagram you can see we have node 1 and node 2. Just assume node 1 is computer 1 and node 2 is computer 2. You want to transfer the object from one computer to other computer. Now you can use serialization technique to convert object into the byte stream, and then the byte stream can be transferred through the network to the other computer, and the other computer can read the byte stream and reconstruct the object again. So the byte stream is quite useful if you want to save something in a file or database or in a disk. That's why it's good to it's efficient to convert object into byte stream for multiple purpose. And the main thing is, while converting these objects into byte stream, we have to use some kind of formatter. It can be JSON or XML or any other kind of formatter. The reason to use this kind of formatter is when this object is transferred to the other side or other process, the other process should be able to reconstruct the object from the formatter which has been used to convert into the byte stream. So that's the reason we generally have to use serialization. So the process of converting object into byte stream is called serialization, and then the process of converting or reconstructing object from the byte stream is called deserialization process. This is also called marshalling, and deserialization is called unmarshalling process. This can actually be different process within a same computer as well. So node 1 can be one process trying to convert object into byte stream and save something in a file, and then node 2 can be other process reading the content from the file and reconstructing the object again. So this is like a basic concept behind serialization and deserialization process, which is not directly related to Django. It is in the computer world. This is the general concept behind serialization and deserialization. So now we will dive deeper into the Serializers available in Django REST framework. So there are different things that we can do with the serializers available in Django REST framework. Basically, the serializers in Django REST framework can be used to convert Python objects into JSON or XML object. It can also be used to convert model instances or query sets into JSON. Similarly, the same serializer can also be used to deserialize objects from JSON to Python objects or any other data type. So this is like converting object from one form to other form. That's the core function of a serializer. But in Django REST framework, it provides more features than just converting object from one form to other form. So the serializers can also be used to validate the data, and it can also be used to validate multiple or each fields one by one. It can also be used to manipulate database tables. So we can use serializers to create or update entries in the database table. It can also be used to add, let's say, one or multiple extra fields, and then return that to the client. It doesn't have to be everything in the model. For example, if you have a blog model, you might have to calculate the blog was posted 10 days ago or 20 days ago. You don't need to save 10 days or 20 days into the database. You just need to have a created date, and then calculate whenever a request is served. You just need to calculate this 10 days ago or 20 days ago into the serializers, and you can add one new field into the serializer, and then return that serializer to the client. It can also be used to serialize other linked models. What does it mean is, if we have a block model, it will have an author which will be linked to a user model. So there are two different tables associated, block model and user model. So with serializers, we can actually get all the information from the user table by using a query only for the block model. So I will show you how does it work after some time. Yeah, so I made this diagram just to have an overview what can we do basically with the serializer. So now let's get into the types of serializers we have in Django REST framework. So there are basically 5 different types of serializers, and the first three are the important ones. I think the first three is serializers are good enough to build or to develop our application, and last two I will explain it later on. I will explain difference between all these types of serializers and which one is good based on your application. So let's start with our Django project. So basically, in order to save a bit of time, I have created a sample blank Django project, which has, this is the main uh, directory, and this is a simple blogs app, and I have just included REST framework. You need to install Django REST framework. There's pretty good documentation about how to install Django REST framework. You just need to go to the documentation and install this Django REST framework using pip command, and then I have added blocks into the installed apps, and this blog is actually empty, it doesn't have anything until now. And let's start this application. I have also created a sample user in order to be able to log in through the Django admin. Run server. Let's go to the server so you can see this is running, and I'm using the latest version of Django 3.1 admin. Now we can log in to the Django admin. So now first of all, what we would like to check is we have different features available in Django REST framework. So first of all, we will try to convert Python object. We will try to convert, oops, sorry, we'll try to convert Python object to a JSON. So let's try to do that using the first type of serializer. The first type of serializer is serializers, that's serializer. So let's try to use that. So I have created a file called serializers.py. So from REST framework import, let me increase the font size. Yeah. Yes, REST framework. From REST framework import serializers. Let's create a simple class, let's say called person, with first name. Let me use init function to self first name last name, and then self dot first name is equal to first name, self dot last name is equal to last name. And now let's create a serializer for this. Let's call it person serializer, serializers that the regular or normal serializer available in Django REST framework. So if we want to, now what we want to do is we want to convert this is an Python object. Yeah, this is a Python object. We want to convert this into JSON, and to do that we are going to use serializer. Now we need to inform serializer what different things should be converted. So in our case it's first name. So even serializers have fields like we have in the model char field, character field. Last name is serializers that again character field. We don't, serializers actually doesn't support text field, just to let you know. So now we have a serializer, a serializer who is aware of the fields that should be converted or transferred to the JSON object. So now let's go to the terminal and run python shell, python 3 manage shell. Now in shell I will import from blocks that serializers import person, yes, person serializer, and also the object. Should have typo, no module name blocks dot serializers, blocks dot se, yeah, serializers serializers import person, yes, yeah, no module. Okay, again typo. Yes, let's create an object called p1. So the first name we can say is, okay, let's call Alan. Last name is Musk. Okay, again typo, shit. First name, last name. Now let's use the serializer person, yes, serializer, yeah, person serializer, and we can pass p1. Now we will see with sr serializer that data it will already have a JSON format. So you can see we have converted Python object into a JSON object. That was what I wanted to explain. So there are different features. We will go through this list one by one, converting Python object into the JSON object. Similarly, we can also validate each field in the serializer. Let's try to demonstrate the validate feature. So now let's say we want to validate first name. To do that, what we can do is we can type in validate and then underscore and then the field name that we want to validate. So we want to validate first name and then the value will be the first name. So what we can validate is, if we can say if the length, let's try to validate length. We can obviously have max length property inside char field, but this to demonstrate the validate feature, let's validate the length of the first name. If the value of the first name is greater than 5, let's throw an error. Rise serializers dot validation error, and first name cannot be more than 5 characters. Okay, and then once we have specified the validation rule, we can return the value. So if there is error, throw the exception. If not, return the actual value. We can also actually, okay, let's try to do check this first. So I will exit again to the cell. Let me copy paste some of the things because I want to save a bit of time rather than typing it and everything myself. So import that, import the person p1. We want to check the validation rule. So if the first name is more than 5 LONEEEE, which is more than 5 characters, unexpected q again, sorry, FIRST first name, and now we can use the same serializer, person serializer. Now if we try to check if this is valid or not, so it has a function called is valid, which will, when we call this function, it will actually try to execute all the validation rules. Cannot go, okay. So what we need to do is we can pass data is equal to p1 and then say sr dot is valid. Is false, you can see the validation function is false, and we can check the errors using serializer object.ar errors. Person object err ors errors. So as you can see, string invalid data expected a dictionary but got a person. Let me check what's wrong. Validate underscore first name, that's true. Value value, yes, that's correct. Invalid data expecting a dictionary but got a person. It's expecting a dictionary but got a person. Let me check what's wrong. This is right, validate, and then yeah, it should return the value. I mean, generally what should have been there is we should have got this message: first name cannot be more than 5 characters. Yeah, if length is greater than 5, something is wrong. Non-field errors. Error detail. String invalid data. Expected a dictionary but caught a person. Invalid data but got a person. It was expecting a string but it got a person object. Okay, let me try to do this without. Okay, in order to call is valid function, we need to pass data equals to person object, and then we can use errors. Non-field. Generally this error occurs when we don't validate each field. If first name, yes, that's correct. And if we want to, we can also use a validate function. Validate. So we can apply actually multiple validation rule into this single function. For example, let's say we want to validate that name should not contain the hash symbol in front of the name. So if we have some error, in this case it should prompt this error, but the problem right now is something else. I'm not sure what is wrong with this. Expected dictionary. Why does it expect dictionary? This is character careful. Let me specify max length just to try out. Max length let me specify max length on both and exit the terminal, reconnect through the cell once again and import the required dependencies. From blocks the serializers import person and person is serializer. Now I will create a person object. First name is equal to Alan, which is more than 5 character, and last name is Musk. Now serializer person is person serializer, pass in with data argument p1 and sr dot is valid is false and errors. We are still getting the same error. What's wrong? Let me comment this out and let's check if this validation is working. Serializers, that's serializer. Yeah, everything looks good, everything is right, but I've tried this before and it used to work. but got person. Mm-hmm. Okay, I guess I am doing something wrong with this one. It should not be person object, it should be first first name is Elon wwwqqq, last name is Musk. Now let's say after running this is valid function is false. Now we should say we should see the actual error. Yes, this is what I wanted to see. Okay, so we need to pass dictionary. Just assume this is the data you received from the front end as a post data, which has the fields that you want to save in a database. Now you want to you can use serializer in order to validate the data. So now you can see it has used first name cannot be more than 5 characters. So this validation rule comes from, because I just commented out and I didn't restart the cell, it means it was using the previous one. So now this is working because we have first name more than the 5 characters, and now we have this error, first name cannot be more than 5 characters, which is right. First name cannot be more than 5 characters. Now let's try to check the validate function. Now if we have a situation where we want to validate write a validation rules based on the multiple fields, first name and last name in this case. So this validation rules say if we cannot start first name with hash. Let's check if this is working. So if we go back to the person and let's make it a valid name and let's type in hash, even now it should throw an error but different error. So is valid returns false, and the errors yes sir, name cannot start with hash symbol, which means it now this is using this validation rule validate function. So this is how we can validate data inside the serializer. So now we have demonstrated validate data. Now reusable validators for each field. We can also use reusable validators. What does that mean is we can specify validators for each field in the serializer as a list of function. Let's say max, let's name it, should be a name of function, no more than no more than 2 characters. This is just to demonstrate that this works. So let's say you have a function called no more than 2 characters. You can make this a function, define function, and you can pass in the value. Now you can write the same logic. If the length of the value is greater than 2, rise exception. Rise, just copy paste. First name, okay, first name cannot be more than, let's do 2 characters. But if this is correct, and then you can just return the value. Okay, I again have typo, but correct that value. So now we need to reconnect through the cell again. Oh, exit, from the cell. It's taking longer than expected. I will be a bit quick. So import from the serializer, and where is serializer, the valid one, valid serializer, yes, serializer first name. So we want to validate that yes r dot is valid, yes r dot errors. So you can see now it tries to use the other validation rule. First name cannot be more than 2 characters, which means now this is using this validation rule for first name. This is how we can use, so it means we can create different types of validators and assign those validators to each field and reuse the same validator function multiple times. So we have demonstrated reusable validators for each field. Now we can also use serializers to do database operations. We can use it to create or update the field. So for that we need to create a model. Let's call it a blog model. Let me copy paste some of the code. So we just have a simple blog model which has author, and the author is connected with a user model. So and the blog has title and a content. That's all. That's a simple blog model with 2 different attributes. Now I need to register that in admin panel. Okay, so let me do admin site register blog model. With this we should be able to see the blog model in Django admin panel. So currently we don't have. Okay, we need to migrate. We need to use migrate command because we have created a model. So python 3 manage make migration and then migrate. Yes, now we should actually be able to get rid of that exception. So now we are able to create a block model in database. Now we will create a serializer responsible which can be used to create or update a block model in database. So now let me comment this out because now we don't need this until person. Yes, so now let's create. So in order to use database operations we have to use a serializer called model serializer. We can't use normal serializer but a model serializer, so let's do that. So now I will create a serializer called block serializer, which will inherit block serializer. And now we need to specify meta class for this serializer. Block model, let me import block model. Yeah, and I want to see that. So what I'm trying to do is I'm using as model serializer, and now I have to inform this block serializer which model should be associated with this serializer. So I said please associate this serializer with block model, and now I have to say what different fields I want to serialize. So currently I want to serialize all the fields available in block model. So what this block model serializer does is now we don't have to specify each property in the serializer like this first name or last name. So I don't have to specify title and content manually. I don't have to type it manually here like serializer dot character char serializer. I don't have to do that manually. Model serializer actually generates those properties automatically based on the properties of the block model. So that's the main difference between the normal serializer class So in the normal, this serializer class and the model serializer class. Yeah, for that again, now I need to use create and update function. I have to override those functions because these functions are available. These create and update functions are available inside model serializers, because I want to create, we can have custom way of creating uh, an entry in the database. That's why we can override, create or update instance. So I am using create function, which will as receive. So after applying validation rule, this dot is valid, all the validated data will be present in validated data. Now I can use block model dot subject dot and then pass in all the attributes of the block model. Similarly, update function will accept instance, because update function should know which object should be updated. So we need to pass an instance of the object which should be updated, and then we can get the corresponding data from validated data. If title is present inside validated data, use that. If not, use the data from the instance. That's simple. And then we should not forget to type or use instance.save function, which will actually create an entry in the database. So let's check if this is working or not. So let's go back to the terminal, clear everything, and no, not the migrate command. I want to run Python shell. Just type it, Python shell. So from blocks dot models, import block model from blocks dot serializers, import block block serializer. Now what I want to do is I want to create new entry using block serializer. So let me, yeah, so I want to use block serializer. Serializer is equal to block data is equal to block serializer and then the data. Yes, so block contains a title. Oops. It will contain a title, let's say blog post created using Serializer serializer, and the content is content 1. Yes, that's true. So just assume this JSON or this dictionary comes from the front end as a post request, and now you want to create an entry, you want to create a blog post in the database. So we will do like this. Block serializer is not defined, should have typo. Yes, ERI, yeah, of course. Yes, ERIA Now we can say if this is valid or not. Oop. Serializer that is valid. Add an explicit field all to the block serializer. Yes, I have done that. Fields. It's not field, it's fields. Okay. Yes, r dot is valid. Oh no, I think I have to quit the shell and then reconnect again. So I have to import everything once again. Blog model, import from blog serializer, Now I have to initialize the serializer object, serializer with the blog post. We are good to go. Okay, shit. Let me copy paste the right one. Serializer, yes. Copy paste that one. That is valid. Now this is true. Now I can say serializer.save function. Now it should have already created the entry in block model. Cool. So you can see we using serializer we are able to create an entry in the database. So we have used model serializer to create an entry in the database. Let's try to update the same data. For that, let me use blog model. Now I'm trying to update this entry. So currently we have one blog post. I'm going to update the text of this title of this blog post. Objects, let me get that object first. If I here filter, it should obviously have id 1. And now serializer blog serializer. Now we need to supply the instance that we want to update, b1. Yep. And then the data, the new data that we want to update. So title, I will say updated content using serializer. Content content updated blog post. Now if we try to run is valid, it's true. Serializer dot save object has no attribute title. Okay, so we have other problem. Instance.title doesn't have other attribute, title title. Blog model, where is blog model? Blog model has, yes, it has title, it has content. Actually I had this problem before. So then I need to supply the instance. So this filter will actually return list of objects with first. Now we will have one in single instance and serializer data b1. Now we can actually run is valid function. It's true. Now we can save it. Yes, save. Cool. Now it should have updated the blog post. See, you can using serializer. Now we have been able to update the title of the blog post. So we are done with the model serializer. Let's go to the other feature that we can use. So in using serializer, as I said, we can add extra field using serializer method field. It means we can go to serializers and let's say we want to add one more field called tag title. I don't know, we can just have anything. Let's say days ago post. Let's call it days ago. Serializers dot, we can use this serializer method field, and now we need to provide the method name. Method name can be get days ago. Yeah. And now let's create a function. Now you can write any kind of business logic that you want to use. For now I will just return a static text. I will just say 10 days ago. Now if I try to run this serializers, now again once again I need to import everything. Let me copy paste just the serializer. Actually I need to copy paste blog model and serializer both. Blog model, blog serializer. Now what I want to demonstrate is if we try to get things from let's say blog model dot objects dot all, or let's use only some of them. filter filter pk1. Actually we only have one, has no attributes, objects, and serializer blog serializer. We can pass blocks, and then we can say if there are multiple items. Right now we have list of one item, so it doesn't matter. If there are multiple items we can also pass many true. Let's try with this. Then now we should be able to get the data. Get days ago takes one position of what, received 2. Okay, we need to pass serialized object. Sorry, I forgot this. So this is an object which is being serialized. Now again I have to actually kill the cell, exit the cell, then try to reconnect it again import everything. I have to do this multiple times just to demonstrate. From serializer, copy paste. It's taking quite long. Be quick. Blogs and the blog serializer. So now if I try to run the data, you can see we have a new attribute called days ago, and then it has 10 days. So we have title field, we have content field, and we now have added one more field called days ago. So what does this mean is we can actually add multiple fields which are actually not available in blog model and calculate on demand, and then return the response to the client side. Now the nested serialization, we can serialize the linked model in the blog model using nested serialization technique. So you can see blog model has an author which is linked to a user model. If you see the response right now, you have an author which is none, which is as expected because we haven't assigned any user to that author model. So if we assign that to the author jk1, and you will actually see instead of author none, you will see the primary key, which means 1 is the id of the user. So it will have author is equal to 1, but using this depth property, depth equal to 1 in the serializer, it will actually retrieve all the information of the user model. So let's try this. Depth equal to 1. So let's go back to the serializer and specify the property epts depth equal to 1. Now we have to redo this again. Reconnect to the Python shell, import from the blog model, import serializers, and get a blog object, use blog serializer sr.data. If you try to check this, you can see we have content, we have author. Now author is an ordered dictionary of a user. So user has password, first name, username, first name and last name, and email. So now it was able to get the content of user table. So this is called nested serialization process. We can also actually use different types of if this block serializer has dependency on other type of serializer, let's say blog tags, we can actually use other tag serializer, tag serializer, and we need to specify if this is all, actually it will understand, but we can do apply this technique to serialize other objects as well. Yes, so we are on with what can we do with the serializers. Now the hyperlink serializer. To explain this, I need to go back to the documentation. Hyperlink serializer, actually I can't demonstrate this in this video because it's already more than expected. It's about 50 minutes right now, so I'll just explain the difference. So if hyperlink model serializer is a type of model serializer, except it uses hyperlinks to represent the relationship. Hyperlink to represent the relationship. For example, in the if you have in our case, if there is a blog model has an author which is a primary key, foreign key. So instead of this, it will actually create a URL for you. So in this example, you can see account serializer uh, will have this URL field by default. So by default, serializer will include URL instead of the primary key field. So that's the main difference between hyperlink serializer and model serializer. And the important thing is we need to pass the request object, because instead of primary key, it will return a URL with ID and then the resource name. So we need to pass in the request so that internally it can evaluate the actual domain name, and it should also have a valid views for these URLs. That's why I won't be explaining, I won't be showing the demo of hyperlink serializer in this video. Probably I'll try to do that in next video. And now the list serializers are actually useful when you want to do serialize or deserialize multiple objects at once. So if you want to do a bulk operation, then this list serializer is useful, but you don't have to use list serializer. Actually you can do this even using the normal serializers.serialize class. You actually don't have to create new serializer in which inherits from list serializer. We can also use normal serializer and then specify list serializer class custom list serializer. Yeah, sorry, we have to create list serializer and then we can specify that to a normal serializer. So this is actually useful, as I said, when we want to do a bulk operation like creating bulk books. In that case, this is useful. Similarly, actually I have specified the short notes about the difference between these type of serializers in this slide. Now the base serializer is actually useful when we want to alter the serialization and deserialization style. For that, we need to override this two representation class in if you want to change the serialization technique. It means currently if we want to convert object into a JSON object, then generally it uses technique like this, key value pair. But if you want to change that technique, serialization technique, you can actually use base serializer. Same thing applies to deserialization process. You have to inherit the two internal value function to change the deserialization style. So basically this base serializer is useful when you want to create like siblings of serializer class. So if you want to create something similar to serializer class, you can use base serializer, and it is obviously help you to change the serialization and deserialization um, techniques. And if you want to customize too much of the serialization techniques, in that case base serializer is useful. But I guess the top three these top three serializers are good enough to build a good application. I guess that's all what I wanted to explain about different types of serializers. If you have any questions, please let me know through the comment. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you, and I hope it was useful.